All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to today's panel, Nonprofit Report, Virtual Fundraising Successes and Lessons. This panel is offered by the Massachusetts Community Foundations Partnership. As you may know, the partnership is made up of 14 Massachusetts-based community foundations who have come together since the start of the coronavirus pandemic to pool resources to strengthen the nonprofit community. My name is Madeline Morgan, and I'm the Director of Programs and Services at the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, and I'm joined today by Kelton Artuso, Associate Director of Programs at Philanthropy Massachusetts. Philanthropy Massachusetts and the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network are really pleased to work with the foundations to bring these resources to the Massachusetts nonprofit community. And we're thrilled to be joined by our 4 nonprofit leaders this morning to discuss successful virtual fundraising and events, address the challenges we are facing, and have a conversation about what practices have been adopted in this new landscape to create these successful events and fundraising initiatives. Before we get into this morning's session, I just want to go over a few logistical elements. Due to the large number of participants in this morning's panel, we ask you to please stay muted for the program. I'd also encourage you to select speaker view at the top of your screen so that the active speaker will appear more prominently on your screen. If you have any questions or technical difficulties during any part of the presentation, please feel free to submit them in the chat box at any time, and we will be addressing audience questions at the end of today's call. We are making a recording of this webinar and will distribute it afterwards to all those who did register for today's event. One last exciting item before we begin. Yesterday, the partnership opened up its application for its free cohort learning program. So the partnership is hosting 3 cohorts of 30 participants each that will meet 5 times over the course of 5 to 6 months. The 3 cohorts are Centering Equity, Strategic Thinkers and Planners, and Virtual Nonprofit Operations. The application for these cohorts will close at midnight on Sunday, June 6th. Kelton just posted the information in the chat for you to go check out these cohorts and learn more about them and how to apply. We will also follow up in an email with the same link so you can learn more. Now onto our program so we can hear from today's experts. Our first panelists are Isa Woldeguiorguis, Executive Director, and Dimitrios Booras, Development Manager at the Center for Hope and Healing, or CHH. CHH offers free and confidential support to survivors of sexual violence and their loved ones, including individual counseling, medical and legal advocacy, healing circles, and more. Isa and Dimitrios, tell us a bit more about CHH and briefly how the virtual setting has affected your organization's fundraising, events, and programs.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. So good morning, everyone. Thanks so much to the partnership for having us. I'm Isa Woldeguiorguis. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Hope and Healing. And I tried to have as my screen the Zoom background we use for our last virtual fundraiser. We'll talk more about that. But the Center for Hope and Healing is an organization that is 45 plus years old, operating in the Merrimack Valley in Greater Lowell. And our work is really about ending sexual violence by ending the oppressions that use it as a weapon. So we have a focus on working with underserved and marginalized communities and on survivors who historically have not received services. So that's the first thing, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dimitrios Booras.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Dimitrios. I use he, him pronouns, Development Manager at CHH. And yeah, we focus really intentionally on people who have not historically been served or adequately served. And so we really, in this pandemic, have held that at the forefront of even our fundraising practices. And so when we're talking about virtual events that we implemented this year, and when we're talking about series of virtual events that we're implementing, we're really focusing on both how we can engage those same people and support them as best as possible. So we started a new gala event. We had a series of virtual hikes. We've been doing some really small scale personal relationship building over virtual events. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And we're just doing the highlights now, so I'm not going to dive into it too deeply, but I really look forward to telling you more about the Lotus Ball. That's the virtual background Isa has, and everything that we did during it.
Great, thank you so much, Isa and Dimitrios. Our next panelist is Aubrey Conquergood, the Executive Director of Cradles to Crayons. Cradles to Crayons provides children from birth through age 12 living in homeless or low-income situations with the essential items they need to survive, to thrive at home, at school, and at play. Aubrey, tell us a bit more about Cradles to Crayons and then briefly how the virtual setting has affected your organization's fundraising events and programs.
Great. Well, also, thank you so much for having me this morning. We didn't plan this, but I also have a background from our biggest fundraiser and virtual event from last December. As some of you may know, Cradles to Crayons has been in Massachusetts for almost 20 years. We celebrate our 20th anniversary next year. And we have been really busy for the last 14 months. We have luckily been a frontline service, so we've been able to continue providing essential clothing, hygiene kits, diapers, face masks, school supplies, to over 200,000 kids living in poverty and low income throughout Massachusetts. We do that through the school districts, homeless shelters, hospitals, all different organizations throughout Massachusetts. And our virtual fundraising and just even virtual engagement has been really important. We typically, in any week in our Giving Factory, we have 1,000 volunteers coming in to help us get all of the essential product that's donated, that's recycled, packed and ready to get to our partners. And starting last July, we were able to bring back volunteers very slowly, but we're still only at about 100 a week. So we have a lot less production. We've had to do things differently. And virtual has definitely been a big part of it. So I can get into that a little bit more as we move forward, but we've tried all different things. We've tested and learned. We've got some, I would say, some best practices and some things that have definitely failed a little bit.
Awesome, thank you, Aubrey. Our final panelist is Emily Eagan, Senior Manager of Events and Operations of Celebrity Series of Boston. Celebrity Series' mission is to present performing artists who inspire and enrich our community. Emily, tell us a bit more about Celebrity Series of Boston and then briefly how the virtual setting has affected your organization's fundraising events and programs.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. Nice to see everyone. I'm Emily Eagan. I am with Celebrity Series of Boston. We are an 80-plus-year-old regional multidisciplinary performing arts presenter here. We present artists at various stages of their careers, from renowned to emerging, in all sorts of different venues across Boston and Cambridge. And we also have a robust community engagement program, which has its own concert series for local artists. In addition, we present an annual citywide public project, and we create, all sorts of opportunities for our main stage artists to work directly with our communities through residencies at schools or local youth organizations. So we are also a very busy organization and very clearly, an organization that relies on bringing audiences and artists together in person, right, to experience performances and workshops and projects. So we did make the jump to digital pretty quickly. We started last spring with our neighborhood arts concerts, and we asked our local artists that would have normally been performing in churches or other community spaces to be our first live streams. And we did this with a new partner, Futura Productions, who we're so happy to work with. Or the artists simply filmed in their living room. So we had a couple of different initiatives there. And in the fall, we presented our first ticketed paid series of international artists who pre-recorded their performances all over the world, and that continued into the spring. So these activities have been really great, in terms of reaching new audiences and keeping our previous audience engaged. What I can speak most directly to, though, is our annual gala and our patron events, which have also gone digital this season. So, with no in-person performances, we were really looking at an empty season of engagement opportunities for our patrons who were really used to seeing each other and staff so regularly. I just remember being really skeptical of the idea of a digital or virtual social event. I really thought nothing could replace that feeling of people being together in the same room, over a glass of wine. So, and I was certainly skeptical of the idea of a virtual gala. But, I really think that we saw all of these great, organizations pulling together and pulling off their galas in a matter of, 2 to 6 weeks when it really started early on. So we did the same, and our audience really followed that. So, we had a lot of virtual patron lounges that I'm happy to talk about more. We ended up with a few new donor events and multiple sort of town hall style events to keep everybody actively engaged. So that's sort of an overview of our digital year. We've also grown, we've made a lot of mistakes and we've learned from them, but overall, I think we were really successful in trying new things. So I'm happy to say our fundraising results also reflect that. So thanks so much. That's me.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And thank you again to all of our panelists for joining us this morning. We're now going to spend some time diving into some questions to learn more about your events and fundraising efforts over the past year. So I want to start with opening the floor up with our first question, which is, what has been a successful virtual fundraising campaign or event that you've had to change significantly this past year? And feel free to jump in and get us started.
It's Aubrey. I'm happy to jump in and start. As I mentioned before, the background is from our Ungala at Home. So traditionally, one of the things I've loved about Cradles to Crayons is their annual fundraising event is closer to the holidays, November, December, and they bring in about 300 families to 2 different shifts to volunteer in the Giving Factory. So they call it the Ungala because we actually ask, our donors and families to come in and volunteer and do production for us, while we have all different sorts of entertainment, and we'll have local sports celebrities, perhaps some food. But the main purpose is really to learn about Cradles, to learn about what we do. We oftentimes have a family member of a family that we serve speak during part of it to really show the impact that we have. But that traditionally has been our fundraiser for our big fundraiser for many years. And again, it's really the total number of people that can come is the occupancy we have in the Giving Factory. So we may have 600 to 700 families in during one, kind of season, one day event. And so what happened this year, as we actually started to plan early for it, because it is such an important piece of what we do. And in June or July of last summer, we started having those conversations. And I think, so many people probably here had similar conversations of how do we do something virtual? We're starting to see other people do things virtual. We actually also have locations in Chicago and Philadelphia. So do we do it together as the 3 of us? Do we do it separate? We decided early on, because it is our big event, and we typically ask for a larger donation for this event from the families participating, to work with a production company that could help us. That is definitely not our background or our cup of tea. And an events organization that can also help us. We didn't know about the costs for it because we don't, typically we don't have a big budget since we're bringing people in to volunteer. But it ended up actually being in the end, being a very similar budget to what we would spend for an in-person event, for food and some entertainment and everything else. Chicago and Boston, and just as background, both hired production companies and an event company. Philadelphia did not. They did it on their own and they figured it out and they did a phenomenal job. And one of the things I think we all learned is it was less polished. There were probably some more glitches, but people by November, December of this past year were so used to it because they had been on so many virtual events or, going to work, going to school virtually, that our families were absolutely okay with it. So I think that was good learning for us too. Since Boston, Cradles to Crayons is kind of the founding location for Cradles to Crayons, it was important for us to really not have any hitches. One of the things that's really important is that volunteer piece. And we thought, how can we continue to bring our mission to the donors and the families? That's why they come in. They want to show their kids, all about volunteering and how they're helping other children. So we actually met a lot with different people that, different families and donors. We asked a lot of the families that are with us each year, what would make it different? What could we do? And what we realized, we probably spent 6 weeks really polling people that we know well and are part of our community. And we did what we called Giving Factory at Home. So the week before the event, all the families who signed up and wanted to, which most participated, came to our Giving Factory in Newton, and they picked up a volunteering kit. So different school supplies that they would kit together that, you know, they would bring back to us the next week, and we would send out hygiene kits, all different things that clothing packs. They came in, we socially distanced, we dropped it in the back of their cars, they drove away. And then during our virtual event, while we had pre-recorded and live, and we had, you know, board members and local people in the community, government officials, sports people, all part of this event, and sharing more of the mission and the stories of the impact we've had. One of the big successful components was at the end of it, we spent the last 15 minutes having all the families go into Zoom rooms and start doing the production at home. And it was so great for us to see all these families spread out with, like, you know, hygiene kit supplies and clothing supplies on their dining room tables or in their family rooms, actually doing the production that they would normally do in the Giving Factory. So it was probably our most successful fundraiser. We could have more people. So that's an interesting question for us as we move forward. Some of the watch outs, you know, it's any event that any of us plan, you always plan that something's going to go wrong. So we had the Giving Factory behind me. We had a live MC actually from one of the news stations, and we had a DJ from KISS 108 because music is a big part when people come in to volunteer. So they were all staged with me live in our Giving Factory. So that was the live part, and with our CEO of the event. And then we had the pre-recorded pieces. Well, the day we planned to have it was also the first blizzard of the season. So I arrived at the Giving Factory at about noon. We were going live at 5 p.m. and we didn't know if the winds would get so high to take down our technology, and the production company was in a different location. So we actually pre-recorded the whole event that day before we even had it. Luckily, because we did that and we had the backup plan, everything was fine and we were able to be live. But it is just such a new world for us. So there was a lot of learning, and you have to expect, you know, kind of things are going to happen. But I also think it's similarly to if my dog starts barking any minute, like we're kind of used to this world that's just a little bit different. The one last thing I'll say about it is we've been able to take that model of having families and now even corporations do Giving Factory at home. So now people continue, and it's actually a big part of our production now, where people come socially distanced, and different things that we need to get out and have organized in production on, they come to our Giving Factory, they pick it up. Sometimes with corporations, we drop it off, and they can have 50 people at the company do different kitting, and we'll do a virtual event typically with it. So that's been a big piece of what we've continued on, and we probably still will do it moving forward. And with that, I'll be quiet and turn it over to someone else.
Wow, that's cool. I'll jump in. Isa again. You know, we're not at that scale. Cradles to Crayons, obviously an amazing organization. So thank you for sharing that. But I want to kind of go all the way back to where Emily started, right? We started off pretty much early in the spring when none of us really knew what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. So we hadn't learned about what they call that Zoom life quite yet, about dogs barking and the cat's tail walking across the computer. We didn't really know any of that quite yet. And I want to go back to what Emily said at the beginning, which is the thing we were worried most about was the relationship, right? Our events where people were mingling over that glass of wine, where a volunteer was meeting, you know, a board member for the first time, or a donor was meeting a board member, right? So all of those interactions that make for successful events, we weren't sure how we were going to recreate that on Zoom. And so we did pivot to do a couple of things. I just want to pick up on some of the things you said, Aubrey. Music is a good one, right? Especially when you're talking about folks from underserved communities, people of color, that sense of community where you build over a great song, or you're talking about something and there's music in the background. So what we decided to do, and Zoom doesn't play well with all other applications. So first time out, we were kind of like, can you hear the music? Can you not? Things would cut off. It's all of that unexpected, right? Expect the unexpected that happened at the beginning. But one of the things we did to build that sense of community was to have folks, when they got on Zoom, to go into, we just sent everyone to individual rooms, like you would at a table when you're assigned a table, right? And in that room would be a host, a staff person, a board member, who would just start conversation with folks in the room. So it was things like that that we worked to, as you both were saying so well, build that community. And that really made a difference for people and made them feel like they were connected and not just on another flat screen. And much of that due to you have to have someone, here's a note to everyone as well as note to self. Someone has to know the tech and be able to do the tech well. It's not me, but someone has to really be that person. Lucky for us at the Center for Hope and Healing, this guy, Dimitrios, is that person. So I'll let him go next.
Thanks. Yeah, so the tech is important. And it's one of the things, and we've gotten this question a lot. So we also spoke at the Greater Lowell Development Group. And I know there are a few folks here on the call from that group too. So hello, everyone. So we talked about the technology there and how to both not just use the technology to make the event a successful, smooth running event, but also using the technology, going back to what Isa was saying, to really enforce and share our values in a virtual environment. So the difference between a breakout room or like the panel conference type stuff that you can do on Zoom, you can't have the breakout rooms in a I'm blanking on the word right now. In the webinar, thank you. Sorry, in the webinars, you can't set up the breakout rooms. So yes, you can have a few different technology pieces that makes it easier to, present as if you're just hosting on the screen, but that really reduces and eliminates your capacity to interact with other guests as a guest and even as a host. So we really stuck with the regular meeting like we're all doing right now. So we had access to that breakout room technology and a few other pieces. Because going back to what Isa was saying at the beginning too, like our mission is really to end sexual violence as a tool of oppression. And so when we're really thinking about our values as an organization, beloved community comes and jumps to mind. And to build that community, you can't make a wall for people where they can't chat with each other, where they can't talk to each other during the breakout rooms before the event starts. While the event is going, we really encourage people to talk in the chat. We made sure to prep our staff to help them out a little bit with that too. But even like opportunities at the end, I think back to the ends of events where, event is done. There's like 10 minutes left kind of thing. Everyone's just milling about, or like the event ended half an hour ago, but you're still having that conversation with someone. That's really important. And so even in this virtual environment, and I know we're all zoomed out, it's really awesome to just have that flexibility and not like that hard stop because it's really jarring. It's really jarring for folks. So being able to transition folks in and out of it really smoothly is a great way so that people don't feel like they're just on another Zoom and that they felt like they were at their computer, but they weren't on a Zoom, they were at an event. So changing that vibe is really critical. So yeah, like you were saying, we did the breakout rooms, which people really appreciated. Interactions during the event, we are in a virtual environment now. So we can flex that and use it to our advantage. So we, those are thermometers that we sometimes put up on screens during our events that often have a little bit of a delay. As soon as you're in a virtual environment, that delay auto syncs to your computer's delay and it actually improves and it becomes instantaneous. So we were swapping out between thermometers. We didn't do it for the first event because, pandemic started and we were all at home in March, and our first virtual gala was in April, end of April. So we were the first on the Merrimack Valley to do it. I remember Barbara Dunsford, who's in the call right now, I was talking about doing this in the Greater Lowell Development Group, and her jaw just dropped and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" But we did it anyways. It was a lot of fun and we improved on it this year. So Diana, who's also on the call, she just joined our team and she went through and did amazing work to set up an auto thermometer. We put up a QR code on the screen, invited folks to give. And we talked about why giving was important too. So it's a lot of the things that we do at our in-person events. They don't need to go away in a virtual environment, and in fact, some of them can be improved on and made a lot more simple. I'm thinking even to folks with disabilities who can't come to our in-person events. They've had a much easier time in the virtual world. People who just don't live nearby. We've had donors who they'll send us a card every year, they'll send a donation every year, but we don't hear from them otherwise. They attended our events this year. And these are donors who live in Florida, California, so it goes across time zones too. So virtual world is awfully useful.
Great. I'll jump in, and certainly, for us, the big change was our gala this year as well. We were not so brave to do it, last spring, but we did our big virtual gala this March. And normally that event is about 250 people. It's in person at the Cyclorama, at the BCA, seated dinner, multiple performances, the works. And so, this spring we knew we would be looking at something totally different. We were fully virtual, obviously, and that was, it did represent an expense savings. So we also actually introduced a lower ticket price level. Because this was a year of change, so why not try it and sort of see who comes through. And that lower ticket price included access to just the streamed event only, whereas guests at higher price levels received a gala in a box and access to some social time with other guests in the event platform, which was not Zoom. It was our really only one that we did not in Zoom. And so, with the lower price level, it's interesting. We were able to reel in about 35 households that we considered new to file. So, people who had maybe interacted with our digital programming, but really not our gala or ever as a donor in the past. So that's really exciting to think about, as we look towards our next in-person gala, is how are we going to keep these people coming back? And so, one other big change, I guess, was just our fundraising in general, and how do we budget for something that's totally new and actually exceeded our expectations by about 10% this year. It was really difficult to budget. We weren't really sure if our patrons were going to support this event because they felt obligated to, as they would in the past. But we actually found that most of our table sponsors were really excited to invite those non-local guests as well to join them at this virtual table. So that I totally, get that, Dimitrios, as well. And, honestly, I think the other big part of our gala change this year was the program itself. So it really helped to inspire some great gifts, to have artists that are a little bit more well-known than we would be able to present at our in-person event. So, we were able to get 5 artists that our audience definitely knew from our performances in the past, and they all filmed these fabulous remarks with asks, to inspire that support. And in the virtual setting, I don't know if others have experienced this, but we did feel we were a little bit more unapologetic with our fundraising. We didn't necessarily worry about interrupting a seated dinner, which we don't really like to do at the gala necessarily with that ask. So we felt like this hour-long program, the artists and the speakers had such great opportunities to point people towards that donate now button, and they really went for it. So that was really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And kind of going off of that, we've had a couple of questions come in about kind of what tools, practices, event platforms, companies have you found to be the most effective in supporting these successful virtual fundraising shifts that you had this past year?
I can jump in. I wish I had some amazing recommendation. I know I just mentioned we did one outside of Zoom. Besides the gala, which we did in a platform called Virtual Tables that we contracted through our event producer, Raffanelli, everything else is Zoom. So, for us, it's definitely using that breakout room tool, using the meetings, the webinars, if it gets, to be a really big audience. But also it's, in practice, it's just the frequency of the events, by offering a Zoom event, before every digital concert as a patron lounge. We saw one with some with some fabulous attendance, which for us might be, 30 households of donors, 6 or 7 breakout rooms where they can mingle with each other. We also saw, some pretty low attendance, but the great thing about Zoom is, even those ones with low attendance, if they're split up into breakout groups, maybe they don't necessarily know that you have low attendance. So, number one, they might not know that. And number two, they might actually get some really great attention from our executive director, our artistic director, or even an artist that agreed to join them in the lounge. So Zoom's been great for us, and I wouldn't be scared of low attendance, if you can actually hide it. So I still feel like those events were really, really exciting for the patrons, despite them being, technically lower attended. And I really do think that those frequency, that Zoom event before every performance helped us stay connected to patrons, even if they kept showing up time and time again, even if they just stopped in for one. We were able to make some new patrons. And as we look towards reopening, and our spring appeal dropping soon, I think we'll really be able to see if, people maintain their giving levels, increase, if those new people come in as donors next season. So it's really exciting to look towards that.
The only thing I want to throw into what you're saying, Emily, because it's a shift in terms of creativity and looking at the possibilities and the assets rather than the loss, right? It seems like we as a whole country have been doing that for this past year. I, for one, felt totally liberated from what I call the tyranny of the event venue. Where are we going to have this thing? Is it parking? Is it a good location? What's the rubber chicken meal or the whatever great meal? And we've done some wonderful things at our in-person events. One time we had a dessert stand and a chocolate bar and a candy station. Like you can do all these wonderful creative things, but that takes up so much time and creativity. I love to throw parties, but I didn't get into this work to be a party planner in that sense. But it takes up so much of the attention and the focus. Whereas now, and last year, we were able to shift that focus to how are we going to support folks getting connected, right? And just what you're saying about how often to do the ask. Right? Oh, the event was shorter. That was the other thing. It wasn't 4 hour drawn out. That's the other thing. You could shorten the event, which is like, oh, you can only do one ask during that time, or you can do way more asks during that time because it kind of flows with the event. So I would say a shorter event and not having to over focus on the venue, which is some of the amazing assets. And I don't know, Dimitrios, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So on the practices side, and I know I mentioned it earlier too, but really looking at your organization's values and how that guides that overall structure of your event. So when Isa and I were looking at the event, because we have shortened it so much, it was an hour and a half, including the pre-event breakout time and the post-event mingling. So that's a really tight time span to have the multiple asks, presentation from folks at the organization, performances, all these different things. So when we were looking at it though, I really appreciate the fact that we always kept our values in mind, and that pre-event breakout room and that post-event time, the mingling time, 20 to 30 minutes of the total event, we did not touch that when we needed to find more time for other pieces, when we need to find time for an additional ask or find time to bring in more introduction to the performance. We did not touch those community times because it's just so crucial. I really want to bring that point to the forefront. Building the community at the start of the event completely changes the vibe of your entire event and how engaged people are, because it's really easy in a Zoom to turn off your camera, walk away for a few minutes, and then you suddenly have missed 2 asks. You've missed the entire video that we just put up on the screen. You missed the very heartfelt story that was shared by someone on the board, and you come back in and you've completely lost your place. But an hour and a half, we do it all the time for the movies. I can't tell you how many movies I've watched in the pandemic. We can sit at our screens for an hour and a half and not need to get up. And so the trick is to really keep people engaged that entire time. So really using your values to help guide the structure of your event is absolutely critical. Going back to the actual technology, the fewer different types of software you're using, the better. You don't want to be juggling 15 different tabs if you don't need to be with like 10 different programs. It's going to put strain on your computer. You might drop the Zoom entirely. So you want to use as few as possible. And I'd highly recommend having people become experts, because sometimes we bring in additional tools because the settings that are more difficult to find in Zoom or this or that. If you really dedicate some time for people to build that expertise in the individual softwares, you're going to reduce the number of types of software you need and really simplify your life. And then aside from just one tech host for the event overall, not just a backup, but a separate tech co-host for each of those breakout rooms is something that we found really critical. So we had a staff member and a board member as co-hosts of the room for the mingling. And then we also had an additional staff member who was responsible for just the tech in each of those rooms. So in each of those rooms, if there were any problems, they didn't need to come back to us in the main room while we were greeting people, interrupt those conversations, right? The flow could be maintained really easily. And then once everyone comes back to the main room for the main event, you then suddenly have 5 people who can field all the questions about why is my sound not working? And so it's a really nice team builds from that. And we've retained that same team for each of our virtual events in each fashion, whether they be fundraising or not. Even our program events, we have those tech co-hosts. So it's been really awesome to do that too.
I'll just add on. I think what everyone has said is so true. In terms of technology, that is so not my forte, but we learned a lot during it. So we use Zoom also a lot, but for our event, we had a different platform that was recommended, and we use Zoom. So, to the point of like just minimizing how many you're using, to also, so if people have to join different things, there's just, they don't have to join too many. And it really, for us was word of mouth and just asking people that or watching, joining different events to see how and what they're doing was really important to us. We actually had one of our team members had worked at Rosie's Place for a long time. I will plug the event company we used because they were excellent. AE Events. She had worked with them at Rosie's Place. They had to quickly go from in-person events to virtual. So by the time we met with them, they had been doing it for 4 months. Again, this was a big fundraiser, but what was interesting to me is when you are planning kind of an annual event, especially virtually, is there were actually a lot of other nonprofit schools, et cetera, doing events at the same time in November and December. So they actually had that calendar, and we were able to see. We didn't want to compete. We didn't want to be at someone who was similar to our mission at the same time. So they helped us in those small ways that I would not have even thought of before. And I think the engagement piece is also really important. So true to our mission is kids are involved. And how do you keep kids involved for 45 minutes to an hour during a virtual event? So we had all kinds of, send us selfies, and they could, add in different Cradles things, or, showing us at home doing the event. We had the DJ who was, at the table behind me, because we had dance breaks during it, right? Like kids are listening, but they can't, they don't want to sit still that long. So the DJ would host dance breaks. So that was all very true to kind of our audience and trying to keep them engaged at the same time. So I think that was also very important. And again, I will say that our Philadelphia counterparts did all the technology on their own. And they were super successful. But again, they went out to corporations they work with, others who have been doing virtual events, and asked a lot of questions and learned. I think by now there's so many people out there that know it well that it is a good place to start.
Great, thank you, everyone. So kind of looking back on this past year as a whole, how have you felt this virtual shift has affected your organization and its fundraising goals and initiatives based on the pivot that you had to make for the past year?
I can definitely jump in on this. So I know we've been focusing a little bit on the gala that we held this year and last year, but another new initiative that we started was a hiking series. So it's, in the same vein as like the walkathons, running things and all those different pieces. But it's a hiking series. It's asynchronous, so it doesn't all happen on the same day. It's for a few months. People can do it on their own time, and that it was entirely virtual last year. This year, because it seems it'll be safe to do so, we also have 2 in-person events, kind of like, let's all go for a walk in the park together, that we're planning. But we've had this hiking series, and it was a brand new event, and it surpassed goal. We did not anticipate it to, and really just focused on it as an opportunity to still be outside and do in-person things while connected virtually. So the virtual connection was what kept it all together, but it was still in-person activities for everyone, which is a really nice contrast to virtual events where we're sitting at our screens. It was something that people could just like take 10 minutes, go onto their phones, take a photo, log their hikes, which is really nice because it made marketing much easier for us when we had user-submitted content. And then they would just go about it and then spread the word. So that was definitely a piece that we had been talking about prior to COVID, and in the virtual environment. I think we realized that we could do it consistently this way, and I don't anticipate it changing all that much, even when we are fully back in person. It's really connected people, again, across the country, in other countries, who know us. So being able to do that, and then, we'll still do an in-person walk, but that series was another really nice piece from the virtual environment.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Oh, I'm just going to say one more thing related to that, and then I'll shoot it to you, Aubrey. A quickie around the values piece, right? Safety, again, a value of our organization, community, making sure folks are safe and well, health and wellness. It was a perfect fit with what folks were doing during the pandemic, wanting to get outside, feel well, feel healthy. So that was a nice fit. And then the other with the gala was sending, I know probably a lot of folks are doing this or thinking about doing this, sending people food, again, nourishment, relationships. So our most recent version of the Lotus Ball, we actually sent people dessert, chocolates and different sweet treats. So can't go wrong when you stick with your values of your organization and how you do things.
And one of the biggest fundamental shifts for us started last April when we were trying to figure out the fundraising, and the team was miffed because our fundraising is built so much on the 1,000 volunteers we bring every week. Volunteers come in, they experience it, they see the need. We have everything in the Giving Factory to help us fundraise, and they get really engaged with Cradles to Crayons, and that's individuals, families, and corporations. And all of a sudden we had none of that. And it was like, but we've always fundraised on volunteers, and so we really talked a lot about it, and we went much more mission-based, which is where we should be anyway, and as part of that experience. And we started storytelling more. So I think what the virtual world allows us to do is to really tell those stories in a different way, to engage people in a different way. We've never been creating many videos before. Whether it's just our volunteers, whether it's the people on our staff and why they work at Cradles, and video production, like even shooting them on your iPhones, which we do a lot of time, putting them out on social media, telling the story about the impact and how we're still really engaged, showing us at different public schools or health centers or places where we're delivering the product, and just how we're out in the community has been important, but it hasn't been such a focus to really share our mission. So now we're really focused on telling the stories and showing different ways to do that and doing it more periodically. So when we, in January, when we wanted to thank all of our donors this year, that thank you came in the form of a video shot on an iPhone of our staff in the Giving Factory. And they all did different thank yous of why they were thankful to all the donors that helped us. And we put together, our marketing team learned how to put together a quick video, a thank you video, and people loved it. And so those are things I think that will not go away, but it's really been really important for us. This past weekend, we shot a volunteer video experience. People don't realize how easy it is to volunteer at the Giving Factory, the social distancing, all the things that we're able to do. And we really need more volunteers. So we don't have enough signing up, even though we could get more capacity. So we did a video on like, why do people volunteer? And we interviewed kids this weekend and regular volunteers. And our team leadership core was in there, and we're putting together that volunteer video to share out. So those are some of the things I think that we'll continue to do that have just been so different than anything we had thought about in the past.
Sure, I definitely agree, on storytelling and videos, that programming for a virtual event for us just took a lot more thought than getting everyone in a room together. You're basically, creating an hour-long TV special, which was just not a skill set of mine. So, for us, that meant really looking at that and seeing what our needs were. And for us, that was hiring a producer to actually help us tell that story. And we ended up with a really, really professional looking program. And I hope that, the storytelling that we can do over video really does come back into the in-person environment in some capacity as well, whether it's, more institutional videos or having an artist do a 10-minute performance with those remarks like we had in the virtual setting, but maybe we put it up on screen. So there's a lot of thinking I think we're doing around the storytelling. And on the fundraising goals, I think from the start of the fiscal year, we were really preparing for a different year. And I can speak mostly, directly to the gala. For example, I didn't want to assume that I would see the same ticket revenue or night of donations. So we budgeted for lower assumptions, even, with our expenses being lower. We just didn't want to make any assumptions about what people would be interested in, if they would still see value in attending this event being virtual. But as the year went on, I really feel like we built great momentum around it. We could actually announce our artists this year, which we don't typically do for an in-person event. We like to leave it a surprise, but I said, please give me something to market, and we did. So that was fun, and I think it helped us engage our sponsors and really, encourage them to fill those tables and just get people excited for the event that we knew would be really different for them, and they would see, great artists that they actually recognized, which was really, really exciting. But it just meant, a lot of reprojecting fundraising goals wise. So we just kept on top of that, and we ended up being really happy with what the night brought in.
Great, thank you. So on to the question that I think a lot of us are grappling with right now. How do you see this virtual shift in fundraising impacting future fundraising efforts and events and methods of fundraising in the years ahead? Are we thinking hybrid, in-person, virtual? What are we going to take from this past year? What are we going to leave behind for this upcoming next couple of years? It's a big question.
Yes, virtual events are I think are really here to stay. We will have in-person events again, absolutely. And I can guarantee you that at every in-person event that I do, there will be an opportunity for someone to join virtually. If there's a lot of people who want to do that, we'll put them all in one Zoom event with a live feed of the live event. We'll have people at the live event also logged into that Zoom event, like some from our staff, some from our board who can greet them. And if it's only a couple people, I'll still do that. I've even been toying with the idea of what would it look like to have tablets set up at tables and at chairs, and someone is actually zooming into the event at their table with a view of the stage, of course. But that absolutely, definitely here to stay. I'm definitely looking forward to still having fully virtual events, even in person, because sometimes we are having these house parties, for example. House parties are a great example. You don't necessarily need to have those in person all the time. For some crowds, it will definitely work, and for others, especially someone who might have friends from around the country, that they want to introduce the organization. A virtual house party could be an astounding event. We're already working with them. We have, I want to say 2 lined up before Memorial Day. So those are definitely opportunities. And again, going back to the hike as an example, yes, there'll be some in-person components of it, but it's really asynchronous and it's going to keep happening in a virtual environment to really connect folks and make it less stressful to support your own organization, both for you as staff, but also for the community. Making it easier to give, I think we all know, makes it more likely for people to give and to give at higher dollar amounts, which is always really nice because that's how we can really support the folks that we want to work with.
Agreed. I think virtual events also give us the opportunity to reach folks far and wide across the country, internationally, and just, you know, as we all have said so far, build relationship, tell our stories, and, you know, folks want to know about our missions. They want to know about what we do and why it matters. So I agree. Feels like, you know, an opportunity to have the best of both worlds at times.
You know, I think I agree. We definitely see an appetite for in-person gatherings going forward in the fall. Certainly our performance season is following that. I think for the gala, I could definitely see having some sort of hybrid element. You know, as I mentioned, that great storytelling that we were able to do digitally, you know, maybe that does translate into the in-person event. So at this point, I guess, you know, I'm trying to think in budget terms, you know, what does that mean for the expenses? What does that mean for, you know, if I was able to package something, something digital, whether it's the performances filmed at the in-person event and the remarks and the institutional video, you know, how much might I charge for a ticket for that for someone who didn't actually want to be at the in-person event? Do we offer that free? So I'm definitely thinking about those things with our team at this point. And, you know, I'd also say for some events for us, you know, it might be the annual meeting, I really feel can stay digital. You know, I definitely wouldn't discount that if there are events that have worked better for organizations digitally this year, I would definitely consider that. You know, for us, that annual meeting has information that's shared, and that's really the most important, you know, aspect of it. It's not necessarily the lunch or the social time. So I definitely want to get that out to the largest audience possible. And I think that, you know, means that it might be better as a Zoom meeting, so people don't have to, you know, make their way to the Prudential Center to park and you know, have lunch with each other. I think that could definitely work, and that's probably the way I'm going to go for at least just this fall. And then definitely, you know, it's worth noting that on multiple occasions we've had, you know, elderly patrons express just how grateful they are for our digital programming, whether it's the performances, the gala, or other events, because they're homebound. So, you know, they might not have been able to engage with us for years until this season. So that's been really powerful to hear, and definitely tells me that digital needs to be, you know, here to stay in one way or another.
I'll just say I agree.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So we have a couple more audience submitted questions that came in. One of them being, what were the most successful strategies you found for keeping participants and or donors engaged in those breakout rooms or in those virtual events when you were hosting them?
I can jump in. So in the breakout rooms, of course, conversation, making sure that the folks that you have in the breakout rooms know how to keep the conversation going. So it's the opportunity to let those board members who can talk about your organization passionately really shine, give them a job. I feel like most board members are more than happy to talk the ears off of people who are interested in learning more about the organization. So board members who are really skilled at that, as well as pairing them with staff that they already know and who can answer some of the more specific or technical questions about the programming is really valuable. I know our board members try to learn as much as they can, and they don't always know the minutia of it. And sometimes people will have those types of questions. Like my $100 donation, how does it support this individual program? So having a staff member who can answer those types of questions is also really critical to that partnership. Music cannot be understated enough. I realized at one point during our most recent virtual event that I was playing the music, but I forgot to share my sound, and right away I had like 15 people in the chat. We weren't even showing anything on screen. No one knew that music was supposed to be playing, and I had like the entire staff like private messaging me being like, "Where's the music?" So music is a really great way. It helps not only set the tone, but it's also setting in and of itself. It really changes the entire virtual event. And then on that vein of music, performances. I know that some of us were already doing it, and I'm really excited to hear that other folks are doing it too. But performances during the event are really engaging. They help people have an interest in it. It's not just talking heads on a screen when you also have dancing or singing to engage with. And yeah, and the pace. Keep the pace moving. I know it feels really fast and it's tough on a tech side or on a staff side, and it's exhausting. But really in this virtual environment where, attention spans are not as at high capacity because we all have so much going on in our lives, keeping the pace moving really quickly both helps people feel like the event isn't lagging, but it also carries them from one segment to the next really well with a lot of momentum. So use momentum during your event to your advantage. Think of it like a roller coaster, like an arc. You're building it up slowly in the beginning with those breakout rooms, for example, getting everyone like going, ready to engage. During the event, you have engaged people, which is either they're adding stuff to the chat or they're donating because you're asking them to, they're actually engaged in the event, and then you're bringing them down at the end of the event. So really use momentum to your advantage.
I'm going with ditto.
I would just add in, whenever we use breakout rooms, we really try to think of kind of what is that experience going to be, or what is that theme. So for us, total kind of different intent, but we love it when people do shopping at Amazon to fill a kid pack for us. So we've had, families come in and kind of build, shopping carts together in breakout rooms for different children that we're serving. Well wish notes is something that goes out to all of our children. So we have, and these are literally little index cards decorated, sending positive notes to all the children that we serve when they receive something from us. And so we have families just get together and make these together and share them. And so it's really just, we do different things for different audiences, but I think having them kind of engaged. Another one we've been doing more with high school and college students around just the need and why it's there, and providing, so we'll provide background material for them to read ahead of time on kind of what's happening in Massachusetts and the US, and looking at clothing insecurity, and if they're national, finding organizations like us in different areas that are doing something similar and learning about them, and then sharing it during those Zoom breakouts, and kind of those students learning from each other. So really just, I think, making sure you have some type of theme to keep them engaged.
I think the last thing I'll just say quickly on it is I've really started treating the breakout rooms like a seating chart. And so, for us, when the guest count allows, and I can actually do this, I definitely, look at who's in the room and sort of manually put them together, because I know so many of them either know and love each other already, or just that I know they would have a great conversation in there. So, and I usually put a staff member in there to confirm my suspicion, but that's been really fun, and obviously, not something you can necessarily do with hundreds of guests, but when we have 30 or so households, it's always sort of fun to do that. So I've enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, we are coming up on the top of the hour. So I want to thank our amazing panelists today, Isa, Dimitrios, Emily, and Aubrey, for joining us this morning and for sharing your insightful experiences from this past year and your thoughts on the future for your organizations as we navigate this new world in the virtual setting. It's truly been a pleasure to speak with you all this morning. So thank you for popping on. And I want to thank everyone else for tuning in as well to hear from our panelists. I do want to quickly remind you that the recording will be sent to all those who registered, in addition to the application link for the free cohort learning program and a survey on what you thought of today's program. So please don't hesitate to reach out to either Kelton or myself if you have any questions in the meantime. Otherwise, I will wish everyone a great rest of your week, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.